Would you rather play in a fantasy league yearly where you play through week 17, or would you yearly have to go see Christmas lights with your significant other?
Oh, I'd always play fantasy football as long as I can. Christmas lights are the worst.
Yeah, but so
And there's big, long fucking lines for those.
there are. But playing through week 17, though, I mean, that's just you hate that. You're on record in the past saying that you hate that. So you'd rather play a meaningful. Let's just say you got all these studs, and now you're in week 17, and all of a sudden they're all sitting. You want to? That's what you want for your championship?
I mean, sometimes you just have to get skilled and pick up the guys that you that are going to be playing, and just get in there. That's how fantasy football savants do it. You get in there, you pick pickups, you play, you win. I don't want to look at fucking Christmas lights ever. There are lights.
The beautiful thing is, us as fantasy football players, we have the ability to make sure that our leagues do end in week 16. The bad thing is, as married men, we have to sit in lines and we have to watch Christmas lights. So
Tell
with
me.
that, DJ, you got a beer?
Always.
Let's get
That
loaded.
wasn't loud.
But this is the Loaded Box Podcast.
Where we never finish first because we finish last.
Thank you once again for tuning in to the Loaded Box Podcast. It's week 17 in the NFL, but we are back and we're going to be talking a little bit of daily fantasy sports bargains, and we are going to do our fantasy football year in review. We're going to be talking about our top hits and our biggest misses for the 2018 season. But I got to hit on it right now. I'm with most people like on Twitter that you see and talk about fantasy football. Week 17 championships are the ultimate worst. You got to get rid of them. If you're in a league like that and you're not the commissioner, you as soon as you hear this podcast, you pause it, you talk to your commissioner and say, hey, we're making changes next year, or I'm finding a new league.
Or you could just listen to the whole thing and then tell them afterwards.
Do what DJ just said. That seems like a bad idea. Well, you know what the beautiful thing, though, about Week 17 in the NFL is? I mean, for the most part, your fantasy football leagues are over. There are a handful that are maybe still going. But daily fantasy sports always lives. I saw Elliot Christ. He's been a guest on our podcast before. He tweeted something today like, Week 17 daily fantasy is sort of like preseason daily fantasy. The way you got to treat it.
Kind of is, and he does that more. He does so much preseason fantasy football.
Yeah.
But it kind of is what it really isn't, because there are.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the teams like the Packers and the Lions, they're playing most of their starters. There's playoff games like the Steelers, who have just tons of skill positions, who have to win.
Right.
Texans are trying to get that 2 seed. Bunch of teams still trying to vie for a different seeding who are going to play their guys. So
yeah, there's not near as many. I mean, there's still a lot of scenarios that can draw teams into it, but this season, like, it's a little bit more cut and dry, where there's not near as many like playoff scenario games. So, yeah, I think you're going to see a little bit more going on here. So, I changed it up a little bit this week. I just have 3 bargain plays for daily fantasy. What do you got?
I've got just three guys.
All right, 3 guys. Well, let's lead off with your number 1 bargain play for the week.
All right, so I have it written down on paper. I was at work at lunch break, and I didn't want to be at work this week, so I did some of this shit.
Nice.
Number 1 guy is a quarterback here. I'm going Matt Stafford, 6,500 at the Green Bay Packers. Packers secondary and their defense in fucking general is decimated, like beyond belief. And honestly, I don't know how many guys are going to be playing anyways, but Jair Alexander really hasn't been involved. Darnold looked amazing against Green Bay. He put up 20-something points. I think in FanDuel, I had him on my lineup. He put up a solid week. This game should end up in the mid-30s to 40s. So it should just be a shootout game, back and forth. Rodgers is going to probably put up another 40-point game because it's at the end of the year and it doesn't matter. So fuck it, might as well have your best game. He's like the number 4 still highest scoring fantasy quarterback in the league.
That's amazing.
Didn't feel like it, did it?
Didn't feel like it at all. I've noticed a trend here lately with some of your daily fantasy bargain plays. I feel like you've been targeting people that are playing against the Packers. Is that a trend?
Yeah, I'm fine. Like the last 4 weeks, I've targeted people playing the Packers, and it's been working.
The one thing, so I had Stafford in a couple of redraft leagues this year, and in a couple of them I actually ended up dropping him. He was pretty much garbage.
Yeah,
he hasn't been in the 20s in fantasy points since week 4, DJ. Since week 4.
Was that against the Green Bay Packers?
Speaking of 4, he had 4 points last week. And no, that last 20-point game was against the Cowboys. The following week, he played the Packers and scored 15.
He'll score against the Packers, trust me.
You would think so, but man, that team, talk about just being decimated. There's no one left on that offense.
They don't have a defense.
That's another thing. But was it you that said played Darnold last week against the Packers?
Yep.
And yeah, Darnold looked like he did like early season Darnold, where like you see a couple of things that he can improve on, but at the same token, it's like, man, that guy looks like he has the tools, and I don't want to get fooled thinking it was against a bad defense or something. But I really think Darnold maybe has what it takes here.
Oh,
like,
yeah, he's good, but
it's
just he's not that good to be putting it up. Like, he just looked like he could do whatever he wanted at that point.
Yeah.
No pass rush.
With your top three bargains here, did you do a quarterback, running back, a wide receiver?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump into a running back then because I want to get this guy out just so I can have credit using him in case you used him too, since I'm not sure who you picked this week.
Okay.
All right, you ready for this?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to go on right at it. I'm going on the opposite side of the ball here. I'm going with the Packers running back, Jamal Williams. He's only 6,800. Like I said, these position players, anything under 7,000, I'm considering a bargain. So I got Jamal Williams, 6,800 versus the Lions. This is a guy, I got to give you some credit, and me credit as well. We both used him last week. He put up a 25-point game after scoring 18 the week before that, and that's when all the whole Aaron Jones things went down. I was looking into the Lions. They're not statistically terrible on defense. They're 15th versus the run. But I think Rodgers in this offense, they're going to put up some points at home. I believe they will. I agree with you to an extent. I think it'll be a bit of a shootout. And right now, Jamal Williams is the only running back in the mix. He and Aaron Rodgers, they were the only people to record a single carry for the Packers last week against the Jets.
I told you that this would happen.
You did nail that. I have a bargain running back I'm going to talk about in a little bit who is definitely not involved in the pass game whatsoever. But Jamal Williams is kind of the opposite of that. He had 9 targets last week, and he caught 6 of them for 61 yards. We're looking – this is week 17. You got to find volume, guys. And Williams is Green Bay's current – like the way Green Bay's currently set up in that situation, Williams is the volume guy. Like regardless of how that game's going, Williams is going to be the bargain – or the volume guy, and I just think he's got huge bargain potential this week at 6,800.
Yeah, thanks for stealing everything that I told you last week.
Hey.
Except I did it without seeing it. People were like, Jamal Williams is starting, but do not start him on Twitter. I'm like, you guys are so dumb. And that's why I'm just a better Packer analyst than people who just don't watch the Packers.
Well, are you using him? Was he one of the guys you were going to talk about today, or what do you feel on him?
Mine has an if clause in it, so it's dependent on something else. So mine is Jalen Samuels if James Conner doesn't play.
Yep.
$6,700 versus the Bengals. So you gave me shit a couple of times because I used the guy that didn't play. Well, you know what? I'm going to give you the if this time.
Give me the if.
So they can pay attention.
And it kind of sounds like Conner's probably more doubtful than anything.
Yeah, and I'm going to make a couple of statements here. Well, first, I'm going to say the Steelers have to win this game, right? So it really does matter. If they don't win, they don't have a chance to make it in the playoffs. That's just it, period.
Yep.
Samuels is as a guy who not only can run the ball, but he plays multiple positions. He played multiple positions. He can catch the ball. He played wide receiver in college. He can do everything. He's got great hands. I
don't think anyone can say multiple positions faster than you can. You said it 4 times in a matter of 3 seconds. It was fairly impressive.
He plays multiple positions. He does. And honestly, when James Conner goes back, I think he might actually be a better option for the Steelers when Conner is healthy. I think he's a better running back for that offense. I think he's more like Le'Veon Bell than James Conner was. He causes more mismatch issues, so you can move him all over the place.
It's so hard to tell right now with that offense just because of so Le'Veon was there. Year in and year out he was producing. All of a sudden, James Conner just comes in because of this contract situation. Boom, produces, has this awesome season. He gets hurt. Samuels comes in, does just a fine job. What is this? Just the whole system thing?
Just a fine job.
He does.
You just said that.
Consistent, man. He's consistent. I like this play here. I'll let you finish if you got more here. But I'm just saying, I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure that it matters who you have back there. I think it's the system and all the weapons that surround him.
And what do I always say about the Bengals defense? The fucking worst defense ever. I was going to
say, it starts with a letter S.
They suck.
They stink. You always say stink.
They're garbage. They're hot garbage is what they are. Yeah. So, you got a guy to play, and especially in a game where they need it, and they're going to be all out playing their best. I love James Samuels, specifically if James Conner does not play in this game.
What was his price?
6,700, and we might know by now James Conner isn't playing actually.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on him yet today, but yeah, like basically everything I said in the middle of yours is what I wanted to say about him. I don't mind that play. I've used him a couple of times in daily fantasy, and it worked swimmingly, so I'm not opposed to that whatsoever.
You're going to talk like a 60-year-old all podcast, aren't you?
That's my goal.
These fucking words you're using are pissing me off already.
I feel old, man. Going through Christmas lights and stuff, waiting in lines, man. We're old.
All these young whippersnappers.
All right, so here's that second bargain play running back I was going to talk about. Gus the Bus Edwards. That's an old man thing. Like that's even an old man nickname because it's not creative. Gus the Bus.
Gus Bus.
6,500 versus the Browns. So you remember, right when he came onto the scene, double digits first 2 games when he was featured. Then he cooled off for 2 weeks, and now his last 2 weeks he's put up 16 and 11 points.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Sure can.
Does he have more or less volume than Kenneth Dixon?
More, and there's not a statistic out there that can prove it wrong.
Oh, good.
That's a shout out to writer Mikey. He won a nice Twitter debate that we had with Twitter guys. So
I'm still hoping he gets that $10,000.
20, I think.
20. Well, you made it 20. I think he said 10, so we'll go with 10.
Yeah, I was high rolling. That was in my
Let's
young
not get
days.
greedy.
Yeah. All right. So Gus is playing the Browns, 24th ranked against the run for defense, and they're in a win. Let me go backwards here. Ravens need to win this game. If they win it, they're in. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to run the ball. They're going to rely on their defense. That's where the volume comes in. That's where Gus Edwards comes in. The downfall with Edwards, this was kind of different than what I said with Jamal Williams. Edwards is a complete non-factor in the passing game. He's got 2 catches for 20 yards all season, but he is literally on that team the most sure bet for carries. And he's had solid fantasy games. Like his numbers have been good. He only has 2 touchdowns all season. So he's not touchdown dependent whatsoever. Yeah, Twitter guy's going to say, oh, Kenneth Dixon's going to get some volume. Sure, maybe he'll bite into a couple of carries. But in a game last week where they carried the ball 35 times, Kenneth Dixon had 8 carries. I'm not worried about him. Don't let Dixon stealing a carry here or there take you away from Gus. Use Gus Edwards, $6,500, bargain running back.
I mean, that's just 8 carries and 30-something. That's just a guy giving a guy a blow, essentially.
Yeah, literally. I mean,
so that's nothing. That's just standard running back problems.
No, that's and what I like most about him is you're in a situation there where you know Baltimore needs that game. Like that's it. Like what are they going to do? They're not going to drop Lamar Jackson back 40 times and make him beat the team with his arm. If it gets to that point, they're probably not going to win. They are going to rely on the defense. They're going to rely on the run game. Gus Edwards is in for a huge workload.
Go Cubs, go.
Do you have a third bargain play?
Yeah, I got a wide receiver. We said we have 3.
Oh, yeah, let's hear it.
So I've got this one. I don't have much to say, but I just love it, and I think it's the best pick of the year. My guy is only $6,300 wide receiver playing in Seattle. It is Larry Fitzgerald.
Ooh.
I don't have much to say besides it's his last game. You think he won't do something special? Remember what Kobe did in his last game? That's what Larry Fitzgerald's going to do. He's going to drop like 60 fantasy points right on their faces. If you think Larry Fitzgerald isn't going out just banging everybody, you're crazy.
I mean, they're going to force feed the hell out of him, right?
Oh, my God, they're going to force feed him. Josh Allen will probably have 7 picks, but he'll still have 15 reception. I'm
looking at it here. So Larry's targets the last 3 weeks, 9, 8, and 9. Quick math, that's 26. He might get 25 targets in this game alone. Like, they are going to send him away. I want to see how he did the last time they played Seattle. Oh, wow, that was a long time ago. I'm not sure it was relevant. He only scored 4.3 points.
Don't care.
Back in late September against the Seahawks.
Was that his last game?
Against the Seahawks. Oh, you're saying
was that his last game, though, of the year? Was it the last game?
No, it was not.
Okay, that's all that matters.
I like your reasoning, but I'm just scared of it. He's went 4 straight here without a touchdown.
Okay, this is like This is like when
You're betting on the legacy is what you're doing.
Exactly. This is like the 2 times that me and you didn't bet on Nathan Peterman. It's a guarantee. Bet against Nathan
You
Peterman.
know what? No, I'm not even going to lie. When I was prepping for this and I was like trying to look for a receiver, your exact theory as to why you used him crossed my mind. I just didn't have the balls to pull the trigger on it.
I got big balls.
Yeah, cojones. All right, so you went with like the oldest receiver in the league. And,
Shit, yeah, boy.
And I'm going with I shouldn't say he's the youngest because he kind of got slighted for being an old rookie. My bargain play because it's Calvin Ridley, but he's only 5,900 at the Bucks. All right, 15 games he's played in this year. He didn't touch the ball. He didn't catch a ball week 1. So basically, you can cut it down to 14 games. He's put up a stat line of 59 catches, 789 yards, and 9 touchdowns. It's a pretty solid rookie season. Really inconsistent, though, as a fantasy scorer. Look at his week by weeks. They're fairly puzzling. You're not going to want to check them out. He'll sprinkle in some 16 to 20-point fantasy games, and they are just surrounded and littered by like 5 to 7-point games.
I almost picked him last week, too. I was on the verge of having him as my bargain receiver.
Really?
Yeah.
Because he scored last week, too. He had the long one.
Yeah, he played a really good week.
Yeah, he had a nice one. Here in this one, I think the Falcons are going to try to get the rookie to go out on a high note. I'm predicting over 100. I'm predicting a touchdown. It's the Bucs. It's the 23rd ranked pass defense. I'm not worried about them.
I'm predicting pain.
For who?
Just pain.
My DFS lineup.
I just wanted to say it because it's a line.
All right, well, let me get back to Calvin Ridley because I have one bad thing about him here, and it's that he does not have a safe floor. He's averaging 11 points per game on
no
FanDuel.
Shit there, Sherlock.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, but you'd look at his average of 11, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty safe. That's where that stat is really misleading. Because if you look at him, you're like, oh, he's averaging double digits per game. That's literally because of those huge weeks that make up for those 5-point weeks.
I'm going to talk about this later in this podcast, too. That exact same thing.
Oh, I know where you're going already. I already know. Nice teaser.
Yeah.
So Ridley this week, it's more of a gut play for me than anything. This game means nothing, but it looks like Matt Ryan and the starters are all going to see the action in this one. I say fire up the rookie. I say they make him go out on a high note.
Give him some weed.
A real high note. He can do that in the offseason.
All right, so
we've got some bargain play DFS guys. Like DJ said, pay attention to the injury report. Pay attention to how the games are going, which ones matter. Don't be playing any studs that might not see action. Like you gotta be smart. We can't do everything here for you.
Make it high risk and just put $100 in a tournament and really fucking make the day interesting for yourself now that fantasy's over. Just have yourself on the edge of the seat. Put $100 down on just one huge tournament.
Hey, you need the excitement.
You'll be watching that thing so fucking closely.
You will be.
You'll be second guessing every goddamn pick you make for 2 hours straight.
That's the one thing I've noticed when I play a lot of daily fantasy.
Yeah.
Going into the games on Sunday, my phone battery needs to be at least 90% because I am checking that thing constantly. That's the one bad thing about daily fantasy.
I can go through work and I leave with like 50%. I go through 2 hours pregame of fantasy football and I need to charge my phone.
Yeah.
Yep. You know what I love about choosing DFS lineups, because I know everybody else goes through it, so I know it's probably relatable, is you go through and you set these lineups and you set multiple lineups, or you set one and it's like $20 or whatever like that, and you're just constantly like, no, I want this guy, I'm going back, I'm doing this guy, and then as the games start and there's all these guys doing great things, you're like, fuck, I was gonna choose him, and then you like second guess, like, god damn it, why did I choose him? Like I don't know, just like that doesn't happen in every week or everybody's life. Like you're gonna choose somebody and then think about somebody, and it's not like. It's like you're trying to prove to yourself that it's like, oh, I had the right pick. I would have gotten him. And then you're telling your friends, like, I had him in. Nobody gives a shit. You didn't put him in.
Yeah, then you have no proof. My issue is I'll do that same exact thing that you just described, but I try to go as long as I possibly can before checking it the first time, because I know once I check it, I'm going to be addicted to checking it. So I will go through all those lineup scenarios. I'll forget if I played the guy or not. So you'll have like T.Y. Hilton that'll catch an early 70-yard touchdown, and I'll be like, yes, nailed that one. I'll go back in and check. I didn't use him.
It's a crazy game of poker.
Yeah. So before we get into our 2018 fantasy football review with our biggest hits and misses, let's talk about Pristine Auction real quick. Because they are packed with daily auctions, tons of stuff for the man cave. They guarantee their items. They all come with certificates of authenticity from only the trusted sources. It's also affordable. A lot of people don't think you can afford the signed merch, but it's more affordable than you'd think. It's quick and free to register. It's free to bid. You only pay when you win. Make sure that you mention us, the Loaded Box Podcast, in the How Did You Hear About Us section when you register. Head over to pristineauction.com today to start bidding on that stuff, and make sure you do mention us, because then they will sponsor another giveaway, and you can be just like, let me check here, T. Cov Cards 11, who won the Devontae Adams signed mini helmet that DJ's drool is probably still all over.
Good one.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, man. So it was quite the fantasy season. I was looking through. What I ended up doing was I looked through like our final rankings. I looked at where these players were in ADP. I looked at where they ended up finishing after week 16, and just kind of picked out some feelers based on man, yeah, I got that one. I was pretty happy with that pick. And then there was some on the other side, and I mean, we're guys. We're beer drinking guys that we know about fantasy, but hey, we make mistakes, and we're going to own our mistakes. So we're going to talk about some misses as well. So do you want to lead this off, or do you want me to?
I don't care. I'm drinking a beer right now. It's like 10%, 10.5%.
Is it 10.5?
It's 10.5.
I was going to correct you. I bet it was 10.5%.
It's 10.5%. It's great. It's one of my favorites.
Nice. Well,
Feeling it.
Let me start this off with one of my hits, and this is a little bit. You might call this one a little controversial,
Hit it.
But I will. I'll justify it here in a second. So one of my hits this year was Melvin Gordon. I had him ranked as RB7. His ADP was 9, so I was really close there, and he finished as RB6. But this goes back, why I picked him, this goes back to so many people who always continued to say Melvin Gordon cannot be your RB1. He cannot be trusted to lead your squad as the running back position. He's more of like a back-end RB1, high RB2. This dude finished as RB6 despite missing weeks 13, 14, and 15, which definitely sucks a ton for fantasy purposes. Like, you really need your guy at that point. But man, think about what he could have done with 3 more healthy weeks. Like RB6, 3 more healthy weeks, he's a top 5 guy.
I mean, that's like the same with like Todd Gurley, though, right?
Okay, but no one. No. This is where I said.
Stumped him.
No, this is where I said that there would be some controversy because he is a high-ranked guy. But everyone was like, Todd Gurley's either RB1, 2, or 3. There was no debate. He was one of those guys. There are people out there that just are like, oh, I'm a Melvin Gordon hater every single year. He's a high-end RB2 at best.
I didn't see any of that, I'm going to be honest with you.
Dude,
I don't think this is good at all.
That's all out there. It's out there all the time. People hate on that guy.
No, because the whole hype was he's going to get more involved in the passing game this year, so he's going to do even better.
That was the hype that you heard from me. I was telling you.
I saw that all over Twitter, and that was like the whole hype. I think this is a garbage one.
Well, then
you must have been really bad at running backs this year.
No, I got another running back on my list. Let's go to one of your hits.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one of my hits is, now I'm going to find it again. I did quarterback, running back, and wide receiver because I just wanted to hit one of each. So I did 3 total hits and 3 misses. Mine was Mitch Trubisky, one of my favorite ones. I was like a closet Bears fan this year, obviously. I had him, I didn't give down ADPs, but I know where his ADP probably was, either undrafted or 13th round or something like that, you know. I had him ranked 16th, QB 16. He finished as QB 14. That was with him, and I'm going with your missing. He missed 2 games.
Right.
And in those 2 games, they played, I think it was Detroit and the New York Giants. So those are opportunities to get points, especially in the offense that Nagy has created out there. He put up 1 game, over 40 points, and 2 over 30. That was the best call and maybe one of the best picks I've ever made in like my preseason predictions. I told people I would wait and draft him as a QB in round, I think, 13-ish, and I would grab the other quarterback in 12 or 11 just to have 2 that I could, go back and forth just in case it wasn't. But it worked out for me. I pretty much started Trubisky the whole year, and there were some weeks where I was just – it was unbelievable. He, won me games.
For how much I want to hate on you for how you trashed my Melvin Gordon pick, I have to give you a little bit of credit here because I remember the specific podcast where you brought up that idea of actually using a draft pick on Mitch Trubisky and feeling comfortable with it. And we had a guest. It was Mitchell Renz. We literally, both of us, just laughed. I remember looking at him and we just laughed at you. And I was like, you can't do that. Like, you can wait on a guy Like, you can get like Phillip Rivers later. You can get Matt Ryan later. You can get Stafford later. You can get all these guys later. And you're like, nope, give me any of those guys and give me Mitch Trubisky and I'll play matchups.
And it was more about the matchups. I mean, I thought Mr. Trubisky was good. He's not as good as as the season's going on, I don't think he's that good. I think he has room to get better.
Oh, for sure.
I think he'd be a lot better with a different quarterback. But it was more the offense, and it was what I thought it would be.
Yeah. No, and he got it done like running too. I mean, that was a huge bonus.
I wasn't ready for that.
That was a huge, nice bonus for guys like him and Josh Allen. No one really saw it coming. I mean, you saw a little bit with Trubisky, but yeah, so hats off. I wasn't wearing one to begin with, but it'd be off to you if I was wearing one.
Yeah.
I'll go into my my second hit here, and there's a little bit of a trend here because this one was Emmanuel Sanders. I had him ranked 26th. His ADP was 30. He actually finished as wide receiver 21. Another player that could have finished higher if it wasn't for that damn injury. But man, he was crushing it when he was healthy. He didn't play those final 3 weeks. Still finished as a mid wide receiver 2, literally despite being drafted as a mid wide receiver 3. And the best thing about Emmanuel Sanders, I remember one time we were on the phone. I was going back to my house and I was going to change my lineup. And I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about taking out Emmanuel Sanders. And you laughed at me. You're like, dude, he's winning you weeks. What are you doing? So I left him in there and he crushed it. That was that game he played against the Rams, I believe. The best thing about him, when he was healthy, he was out there winning you weeks. He had double digits in 6 of his first 7 games. In that stretch, 3 of those games were 20-plus point performances. I don't know what I was thinking ever considering benching him for how much I loved him coming into the season. And I'm super happy with that finish, despite once again missing the most important portion of the season.
Yeah, that ADP and where you ranked him aren't relevant in this argument. I really like that one. I told my boss and you both were considering benching him. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I wasn't a fan of Sanders going into it, but then, like, he was at one point, I think like week 7 or 8 was like top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. He was just dominating, and I was like, how would you even think of benching this guy when he puts up numbers every single game? And obviously, Case Keenum loves him. You saw what he did with like Thielen last year and things like that. So, yeah, I was astonished that you and my boss were like considering benching him in like the same week, and I'm like, how?
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad you talked me out of it. So that was a hit for you, but for the whole season, I'm going to chalk that one up as a win.
I probably missed on that one too.
You might have missed on that one.
Yeah.
Let's go to your second hit though.
All right. So my next 2 are Packers. Go figure. I always say that I'm the best Packer guy though. Like, when I predict something about the Packers, it usually comes true. Am I right or am I right?
Well, I don't want to get into the playoff conversation.
So, Aaron Jones, I had him ranked as RB18. I got a lot of numbers here that I'm going to spit out. Not numbers, but a lot of facts here. And numbers. And he finished as running back 21. Now think about this. He finished as RB21. He didn't play the first 2 games because of suspension, or the last 2 games because of his injury here.
I forgot about that.
The most recent last 2 games. And for about 4 games, Demass McCarthy just didn't use him.
Right.
Like, at all. For like 4 games. He put up RB1 numbers in games he was full go, and I'm going to prove that to you. I'm gonna do some math for you. So if you take the last 7 games in which he was the first featured back, so it was like week 8 to 14 or something like that. So last 7 games in which he was the featured back, I put featured for some reason, featured back, in his average in those 7 games, his average comes out to 19.6 points per game.
Right.
So then if you extrapolate that over a whole season, that's 313.6 points per game. Do you know what running back that would have made him?
I'm going to guess like 4.
RB6. So it would have been McCaffrey, Gurley, Barkley, Kamara, Elliott. And then just off averages, which he was consistently putting up 20 points every week in those 7 games. I went through the list. It was like 20 points every game. That's a guy who, if you think about it, next year should be drafted in the first round.
Based on that, yeah, but are you a little bit worried? I know we don't like to hold injuries against a player like that, but now this is 2 years in a row where he's missed time due to injury. Like, is this one of those guys that's going to be nagged by it?
No, I don't put much stock into it because
I didn't see the game he got injured.
It didn't matter.
I didn't see the one how he got injured against the Bears.
It wasn't like a big thing. So I just think it's like an injury that would have
Like
held
a
him out
freak
for a
accident.
while. It's the end of the day. It's the end of the year, so might as well, because they're not in the playoffs. So it's like,
Right.
put him on IR. They did the same thing with Kenny Clark. Like, he could have played, but they threw him on IR. It was one of those save the guy for the next season. It's no point putting him in any more risk
Right.
because he's going to not really play. He was probably never going to play anyways. So it just opens up another roster spot. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, that's some pretty crazy.
That has no. I'm not worried about that injury thing for him.
That's some pretty crazy company that he'd be keeping when you extrapolate those numbers out. I mean, it's pretty impressive. And like you said, like, where's that ADP going to be next year? Like, is that going to end up being like a little bit too rich? I'd be interested in seeing if I haven't checked out like recent ADPs. I don't know if there even is such a thing right now because I don't think anyone looks at it at this point. But when they do start coming out, where he's going to be, because I could see him being one of those guys that where maybe this injury and missing the end of the season here maybe benefits you a little bit because he didn't score higher. Because people won't think about it that way.
I'm thinking that people will probably draft him lower. We're in Wisconsin, so I think he'll probably still go in the first round. But he should be a first round pick. I'm dead on that.
That's just crazy to think. When you say it out loud, I mean, it makes sense. Running backs you need a stud, and if he finishes as a top 6 guy, it warrants it. So.
People will be saying this numbers all summer next year, so I'm giving you the numbers first, and everybody's going to be saying them next summer. So just so you know where you heard it first.
I was just going to make a comparison, but I don't want to spoil anything for you, so I'll just keep my mouth shut on the rest of the Packers talk. I'll go on to my third hit here. I got Tariq Cohen. I had him ranked as RB27. His ADP was RB34. He finished in half PPR leagues. That's what I've been going off of. Sorry for not saying that earlier. He finished as RB13. So I didn't nail this one because I was only 7 running backs higher than his ADP. But I had him higher because I thought that volume in the passing offense would be there. And he got it done, and that's exactly what ended up happening for him. This dude finished as RB13 despite having double-digit carries in one game all freaking season. That's crazy. And on top of that, he only ran for 2 touchdowns. Like, these stats that he throws out are just amazing. But he led the team, or leads the team, I should say. There's a week left. 69 receptions. Second on the team with 717 yards. And third with 5 receiving touchdowns. He's got more touchdowns than Allen Robinson. I think Cohen is a running back that's here to stay. The way that the NFL is played now, there's room for this type of running back. And like I said, double-digit carries once. 2 rushing touchdowns all season. He's RB13, high-end RB2. I got to chalk that one up as a nail for me.
I mean, I think the whole more touchdowns than Allen Robinson was almost a vote against you, though. Who gives a shit about how many touchdowns Allen Robinson had? Why is that the name that you picked?
Because what I'm saying is that's your wide receiver 1. That's your top guy. And this running back has more touchdowns than your first wide receiver. That's why I'm using him as a comparison.
He's still a running back who gets a lot of, like most running backs should have more touchdowns than wide receivers, though.
Not receiving.
Is it receiving touchdowns?
Yeah, thanks for listening.
But still, how Cohen uses it, how they use them, I don't see that as a big deal.
I think sometimes when I talk, you just focus on what you're about to say about your next player, and you don't even listen to what I'm going to say.
No, I heard you said. I just don't know why you would use Allen Robinson as the guy.
No, stop right there.
Robinson.
You can say, I heard what you said, I just didn't listen.
Well, I didn't hear the receiving touchdowns part. I thought it was just touchdowns in total.
You are just nonsense. Go to your third make before you make me mad.
It's still fucking Allen Robinson. Who gives a shit about Allen Robinson? Allen Robinson, nice job. You had more touchdowns. You should have you picked out a good wide receiver from a random team and made it sound cooler.
I see what you're saying there. Okay, I get what you're saying there.
Anyways, so my last third and final hit that
let me say one thing before you go on. I just looked at our rankings. You loved Allen Robinson. You had him as wide receiver 14. So
yeah, I know, I understand that, but we saw what he was about 4 weeks in, and then I could change my idea of him.
So you're saying I should have said he had the same amount of touchdowns as Julio Jones or something like that?
Yes, exactly. That would have been perfect.
I don't know if that's accurate, but I'm assuming it's not too far off.
How many receiving touchdowns did he have?
He had 5.
Okay, Jones had 6, I think. So I think you would have, if you used that, you would have been way better.
Julio Jones this season, 7. Damn it.
He must have just had one last week. So anyways, I wanted to use Mike Williams in this place because I pretty much nailed it, but I can't not use my boy Davante Adams.
I'm surprised you didn't use Mike Williams, to be honest. That was a good pick.
Well,
that can be what's it called when you're like a runner-up?
honorable mention.
Honorable mention. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I can't not choose Davante Adams. I predicted him before that Nate character who keeps claiming that he predicted him as my wide receiver. And right now, in PPR, he's wide receiver number 1.
Yep.
And in standard, with only 1 game left, he's wide receiver 2 and only 1 point behind Antonio Brown.
With a good chance of catching him.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
That's all I got to say. That was my favorite. I remember when I was just like, I'm going to fucking bump him up to wide receiver 1. Because I just felt it. It just felt like he was the only guy on that team now that Nelson was gone. And they had such, like, you could see their connection building in the last year, and then Nelson wasn't there to take away those touchdowns.
Right.
It was like, who's gonna stop Davante from catching 1 million balls? And he caught a fucking 1 million balls.
The logic made perfect sense. Like, all right, you're getting the number 1 wide receiver on a team with Aaron Rodgers. You don't need to worry about Nelson anymore. He trusts Adams. It wasn't like 2 or 3 years ago when he had those drop issues. He's catching everything. He's a great route runner. Like, it made sense. But then I'm just like, dude, it's Antonio Brown, it's Julio Jones, it's Odell Beckham, Nuke Hopkins. Like, you can't say he's going to be wide receiver 1. And here he is.
I mean, if you watch the guy, though, he's a guy that's not going to just be good with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to be good with anybody. He just beats dudes constantly. He's uncovered so much, but when he does have a guy on him, he's just making spectacular catches. Like, people have forgotten about that 1 year where they thought he was dropping all these balls because his catches he makes are second to none. Like, his hands are at peak performance right now. He's making beautiful catches. He's getting wide open. Any quarterback in the league would succeed with him. I mean, Brett Hundley did. I mean,
right.
All you had to go back is look at Brett Hundley last year with Davante Adams and realize how good that he was going to be with Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't that hard.
The thing is, too, yeah, it's hard to like even argue against you on that one because here's a guy. What was he ADP wise for wide receiver? Like probably like somewhere between like 7 to 12, depending on who you're talking to.
Oh yeah, somewhere in that area.
And you're like, nope, I'm putting him 1. I
grabbed him in the first round in 2 weeks.
I remember like talking to you when we were doing our final rankings. You're like, dude, I'm putting Adams 1. I'm like, why? I'm like, come on, be serious. You're like, I am.
Yeah, I drafted him in 2 leagues at pick number 12.
I hate it. That was going to be my spoiler. I'm like, well, when it comes to predicting some fantasy stuff for the Packers, you can hit that sometimes. And I was going to say Adams, but I figured just in case you saved him. Yep. But yeah, your honorable mention was a good one in Mike Williams, too. I mean,
I liked him, but
he's kind of like that whole, I think you're going to talk about this in a little bit, too, where he'll have some duds, and then he gets 80 yards and 2 touchdowns and just totally swindles your stats around.
My prediction was 8 to 10 touchdowns, and it was right there. So
I pounded that.
Yep.
And he ran one in.
Well, yeah, it was 10 touchdown.
Well, let's talk about some not so good predictions. I'm going to lead it off here with a running back. And I don't feel terrible about this one. I'll say that right away because I had him ranked as RB4. His ADP was RB3. And he finished as RB10 still, believe it or not. And I don't feel terrible about this one because of the ADP being right where I had him. That's why I don't feel terrible. But I do feel bad due to the fact that I said in the preseason that you could take this guy as RB1 and not be nervous about it. Well, the guy I'm talking about is David Johnson. And if you'd have taken him RB1 over Zeke Elliott or Todd Gurley, you would be pissed. Because...
Or Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about him yet. Because you got David Johnson here that finished as RB10 when I'm saying you could take him as RB1. And here Todd Gurley jumps out and scores 342 fantasy points. So it's really hard to beat that. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say that the Gurley, Zeke, David Johnson debate was pretty much handled by Gurley this year. He finished with 52 more points than Zeke, 130 more than Johnson. So for that reason alone, I think I have to chalk this one up as a loss. And trust me, man, I felt this one. I felt this personally like any other David Johnson owner. I took this guy number 2 overall in a touchdown-only league. He proceeded to score 10 touchdowns this season. Gurley scored 21, so more than double this output. So I feel the pain.
You didn't take Le'Veon Bell.
I didn't take Le'Veon Bell, so that's a plus. But yeah,
everybody missed on that one.
Everyone. Yeah, well, unless you missed him. Unless you didn't take him.
No, but everybody missed on their prediction.
Well, you had to, because everyone thought he was coming back at some point. But,
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I just feel bad for the David Johnson, so I had to chalk that up as a loss.
Yeah.
Good input.
QB running back, wide receiver here. So, Let's start with QB again. Where I had my biggest hit, I think maybe one of my, like I said, my biggest hit of all time with Mr. Trubisky's prediction. I had probably my biggest miss at the quarterback position of all time, too. And I had Carson Wentz.
Yep.
And I had him ranked as quarterback 2.
2. Dose.
Quarterback 2. Guess where he finished, I dare you.
Oh, I didn't even look this one up, but it couldn't have been top 20.
21.
21.
He finished as quarterback 21. I don't have much else to say about it. I looked
That's
at his stats,
low-end
and he had a bunch of
quarterback
18, 20-point games, but I think that was a little flawed. But that was bad. I was like, he's the second. Because remember, it took me forever last year to jump on the Carson Wentz. I'm like, I can't.
Right.
I don't like him that much yet. And all of a sudden, I'm like, fuck it. Carson Wentz finally got me. So then I jumped all the way into the Carson Wentz boat. This year was like, this guy, second best quarterback in the NFL after Aaron Rodgers. And look what happens. Nick Foles is the one who's going to take him to the playoffs again.
Right. And the thing about, I'm just looking at Wentz's stats here. And when he came back, honestly, like if he could have played like he played in the middle of the season or like the right after he came back, sort of, if he could have done that consistently throughout the year, he probably wouldn't have been that bad. He was averaging around 20, but he put it from clunkers too. There's an 11 in there. There's a game where he scored .84 points. He scored less than 1 point against the Saints this year in 156
that was awesome.
yards, 3 interception game. Followed it up with a 13-point game. So, yeah, you probably weren't leaning on him as your quarterback 1. If you were, because he was going late still. If you were, that probably came back to bite you.
So I have to admit that that was early in the season, wasn't it? The Saints game.
No, it actually was. I just had it up here. That was middle of November.
Oh.
Week 11.
Okay, never mind. Then I didn't. It was sometime earlier in the season I played Carson Wentz or something like that over Trubisky, and it just was a terrible mistake.
That week that Carson Wentz scored under 1 point, he was my FanDuel Stack of the Week quarterback.
Nice.
Like I said,
Good week.
we all make mistakes, and I was with you on that one. All right, I've got a quarterback.
You can fucking own it.
Oh, for sure. You gotta own it. If you're gonna celebrate your wins, you gotta own your losses. I had a quarterback that I missed on, and I think you could maybe get chalked up into the same category, but I feel like I'm really in this category because I put Patrick Mahomes as quarterback 23. His ADP was quarterback 16. He finished as quarterback 1. 48 touchdown passes in his second year in the NFL, his first year, obviously, as a starter. That's exactly what Dan Marino did. If he scores a single touchdown next week, he's going to have a better year than Dan Marino did in his second year, which I thought when I was a kid, I'm like, no one's touching that. That's Dan Marino's record. It's not even a thing anymore. Patrick Mahomes just freaking came out of a slingshot here and just tore the league up. And I predicted the Chiefs to struggle a little bit this year. I thought they'd do okay, but struggle. And then next year was the year you wanted Patrick Mahomes, and that totally blew up in my face. This year was the year you wanted Patrick Mahomes, and now he's probably going to get overdrafted. And if he ends up getting hurt or throwing 25 touchdowns, you're going to be pissed off because he's going to get that Deshaun Watson treatment now next year. But man, 72 points more than quarterback 2, which was Big Ben. Kind of funny. I didn't think he'd be up that high, but he was. But why I'm chalking this up as more of a loss is because Patrick Mahomes wasn't on my draft radar. I had him ranked at quarterback 23, but I wasn't even going to pick him. I'm like, based on where he's going, I'm not even going to take a chance on him. I don't want any shares. Huge mistake. Probably my biggest miss.
So not only did you do that, but I downgraded the entire offense.
Yep.
Last year. I literally downgraded the entire offense like multiple times.
You're on record with that one. I remember that.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that more, though. Okay. Are you done?
Yep.
My turn. So my miss at running back that I wanted to talk about this year was Joe Mixon. Now, I had him ranked at running back 29. He finished way fucking higher at RB10.
Let me cut in real quick because that's the funny thing about DJ's rankings because he really doesn't even look at ADP. Like a lot of people times you can go off ADP and kind of like fluctuate him a couple here or there. DJ says, no, this is how I see it. I'm not drafting this guy. Like he totally just said no.
It works for some and I hit on others and I miss on some and it's fine. It's whatever. I take my chances. And this way, or for most part, until playoffs, it worked out really good for me.
Right.
Anyways, And we talked about this preseason when we were getting ready for fantasy football. God, that seems so long ago,
It
but
does.
so like a month ago at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like, look, I misbaked here, but I always said it wasn't a talent thing for me. I thought Joe Mixon is a talented running back, bad person, but a really good running back. I loved his talent. I was worried about the coaching and the actual offensive line issues. That's just what it was. I just didn't think they had it, the everything inside shored up. I didn't think they were going to give him the ball. Thought they were going to probably just give it to Gio still too many times and make dumb mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
They finally did that, and Marvin Lewis will be out of there, so I'm not making that mistake next year. That's for sure. I have no shame in missing. I'm glad I was wrong on Joe Mixon because I thought Marvin Lewis and the Bengals would just be stupid, and it had nothing to do with Joe Mixon, the player himself.
Yeah. The beauty of Joe Mixon this year, besides scoring just points and bunches and being a reliable guy like week in, week out, the semifinals, 26. The week before that, 22. The bad part about Mixon, if you had him in your championship game, 8.8 points. Like he probably.
I know, he was supposed to have a huge week that week too.
Yeah, he might because he played the Browns. He might have let you down a little bit there. Like the touches were there, he just didn't score, and the yardage didn't really come through. But yeah, I mean, I ended up with Mixon in a couple of leagues, and bam, just no complaints. But I was on the same feeling. It's like the talent's there. He proved it in Oklahoma. Like the guy is just a freak. He can do it all, and especially in today's NFL with being so involved in the pass game, that's what Mixon can excel at. Like it was all about using him, and all about will the Bengals be good enough? Will their line improve? It was those kind of questions. So just for his potential alone, I ended up having him a little higher than you. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, you chalk it up. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't.
Oh, and I even said to you, I drafted him in one PPR league in case I was wrong. I knew that there was a possibility with Joe Mixon that I could be wrong, and I was okay with that.
Yep.
I did the same thing with Kerryon Johnson. I was like, I might be wrong, so I'm just going to grab him just in case. Because I was the guys I feel like could have done way better than I thought, and they both did.
Right.
And so I was willing to, suck it up and take those guys because you have to do that.
I felt like a big hypocrite because I did the same thing in my dynasty league.
It was good. It was just a good range to grab them.
Oh, yeah. I got one final miss, and I talked about Cohen as a hit, but man, was I way off on Jordan Howard. I had him ranked as RB8. His ADP was RB13. He finished as the tail end RB2. He finished as running back 24. And while I thought Cohen would
missed on him too.
Oh, I was really bad on him.
Big time. I was going to draft him at the end of second rounds all the time, but luckily I never got him. It worked out really well.
It just seemed like the volume was going to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like even knowing that Cohen would be a factor, a guy that's going to get carries out of the backfield. I mean, not carries, but touches. Like you just thought Howard was like the common denominator every week. You're going to get touches.
He was my Isaiah Crowell, but I didn't draft him. So I got coach talked by their coach, but didn't get him this year. So I at least didn't get Isaiah Crowell twice in a row.
Pretty much, yeah. The thing about Howard, what sucks here. So he goes for under 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, just over 800. He averaged less than 4 yards per carry, and he scores only 7 touchdowns. Like those things alone, man, my neighbors are having a party. The most depressing thing about Howard looking at this, how this went, so I had him at RB8, finishes at RB24. This dude scored a half point more than TJ Yeldon. That is the most depressing thing that you need to know about Howard. I had Jordan Howard above guys like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon, and for that, I apologize.
I just thought of a great song to sing for the off-season for football and what it's like.
Keep the tradition alive of singing on the podcast. I love it.
You ready?
I'm ready.
And I'm looking at you through the glass. Don't know how much time has passed. All I know is that it feels like forever. Perfect. That's what I'm going to be singing all off-season, thinking about the NFL season.
Looking right through that beer glass.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It just feels like so long since the football season, and it's not even done yet.
Let me give a quick teaser because I wrote an article about how you need your drinking guidelines for Saturday of this upcoming week because it's the New Year's 6 bowl games. It is a phenomenal slate, and just the way everything. I don't want to spoil my article too much, but the way everything lays out. Saturday is your all-day marathon drinking day of the year.
Fuck, I have Christmas on Saturday.
Oh, punt on Christmas. Take Christmas,
only
put it on your foot,
though.
punt it. All right,
I can get home at 4, though.
That's not bad. you'll have to catch up on the drinking game here. It's not really a
I'm
drinking
gonna-
game as much as it's a drinking guideline, but I'll be
That's
releasing
amazing.
that I think tomorrow. I think you guys are gonna
That's
like that
great.
one. All right, we got one left. You got your one miss
Yep.
left. All right, let's hit it.
I got a lot of words for this one too. So I really miss on Tyreek Hill. You know, this is the kicker. I saved him for last because a lot of haters out there.
Oh,
hate
so
Tyreek
many
Hill.
haters.
I had him ranked as wide receiver 34.
I almost spit up everywhere. That's what I'm talking about. DJ's rankings, though. Like when I was prepping for this, I'm like, DJ's going to have an easier time finding his hits and misses than me because his rankings are truly his rankings.
I just do this like obscene ranking because I'm not gonna fucking draft him. So let's rank him 34. I might as well rank him 73.
Make sure he's gone, right?
He finished as wide receiver 5 in PPR. It was like 3 in standard scoring.
Yep.
But again, okay, this is where everybody's gonna hate me, but this is where we love to be hated. Again, I feel justified with Tyreek because he does what I think that he does. Right? I will never, ever in the future have him on my team. Ever.
Holding strong.
Unless it's a touchdown league. I will do it then. Because I want a guy who gets me points consistently from week to week, right?
Yep.
If you have him in a league that is just total points, you're not playing one-on-one, he's great. He's awesome. But look at his last 4 weeks in PPR and standard. So this last 4 weeks here, he had 22. This is PPR. 6, 22, 8, and 13. That's 6, 8, 13 are not good in PPR at all.
Right.
In standard, that 22 was 13. So it was 4, 13, 4, and 8.
Right.
And that's the fucking playoffs. That's your playoffs. You just lost games. You just got fucked over for a second year straight by Tyreek Hill in your fantasy playoffs because he's the most inconsistent fantasy player of all the time. So I decided that this might be a calculation or a calculator out there, but there needs to be a calculation that shows consistency week to week in comparison to boom or bust guys. So I'm going to create this. Like, you can look at averages and be like, oh, this guy scores. But that's not like a true average when it comes to fantasy football head-to-head matchups. You look at Devontae Adams. That's the guy you want on your team. He scored 14 points or more in every fucking game.
That's crazy.
This season. Okay, in PPR, I think he had like no less than 10 or something like that in regular standard scoring. It was ridiculous. You want that on your team every week, and that ends up at wide receiver 1. You have a guy who scores fucking 55 points against me in one league. I still won that week, by the way. And then can drop 4 points on you the next week and then not score any in the playoffs. If you, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but there needs to be a calculation that shows a model of consistency through point average on a week-to-week basis, not just an average scoring throughout the year.
Sounds like a summer school project for you. I think you just signed up for something.
I did. I might have.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, that's if you live and die by boom and bust. Obviously, one of the words in that sentence is die, and that's kind of what it can happen. But imagine kind of like being on the opposite end of that. Like if you have Derrick Henry, and just I'm throwing him out there for an example because at the end of the year he put together like crazy weeks, and you get like 40 or 50 points out of a guy. You can put up with like a 0 out of your kicker or a 3 out of another running back just because that propels you so much higher. So I get it. There's so much intrigue out there just because of those boom and bust play. But yeah, man, like that consistency in order to get into the playoffs, in order to perform while you're there, that's a tough one. But I'm on the record for saying I can't dog that guy anymore. It's come back to bite me. Every time he has a boom week, I'm playing against him. So I can't say anything bad about him anymore. I'm chalking it up as a loss. You've officially chalked it up as a loss with stipulations.
Yeah, well, when you're losing in the playoffs every year because he can't fucking do anything, I feel okay.
Do you have any other honorable mentions?
Congratulations, you won the regular season.
Yeah, you probably did. Any other honorable mentions or anything else you want to hit on, or should we wrap it up?
The biggest honorable mention was the Mike Williams. I was excited about that. Robert Woods was another one.
Robert Woods was a good one for you. Yeah,
big fan of his.
Nice.
So.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you all did well in your fantasy leagues. Like I said, you get to play daily fantasy now, so the season's not over, and daily fantasy continues into the playoffs. So there's plenty to still happen. We'll be back later this week as we dissect all of the games of Week 17, picking our against the spread game. So make sure you come back and check that one out. Find us on Twitter at LoadedBox. Check out the website. Stay tuned for that New Year's 6 drinking guidelines article that should be dropping on Thursday. We're on Twitter at LoadedBox. The website is loadedboxpodcast.com. Check us out on iTunes, iTunes and Google Play. And with that, DJ, send us home.
Cheers. Bye.